Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. India has a history of having republics. Although we consider republicanism something new, that was popularized first by France, or rather first by USA and then by France, taken the model of Athens, where the head of the state would be elected one rather than by dynasty or by the divine right of kings. No. But we often forget, and that is possibly because the Indian history is not known to many people. India had republics way back in the hoary past, in the Vedic times even, where there were no kings. Are you shocked? But that's a reality. There has been a cone of silence about the reality of the Indian civilization, Indian history, Indian economy, Indian architecture, Indian arts, and Indian science. And that is something worth examining why. And now, the ancient republics of India, they need recognition at the world level. Not because it would be another feather in the hat of India, but because the records will be set right. Because they will provide a proper model what a republic should be, rather than the failing republic that we see around us, where the presidents behave like kings and despots. An Indian that sees its own democracy as a pale imitation of Anglo-American system and neither good for itself nor for the world. India is not just the world's largest democracy, but it's in fact the mother of democracy. And this assertion would settle the facts. Rather, it will unsettle many long held Western notions about Indian milieu and what it should be. The existence of proto forms of democracy and republicanism in ancient India is a part of humanity's common heritage. And how can you have a world history without understanding the shared view of the past? For us, the history of the democracy starts with Athens, Greece. No. As a matter of fact, if I look at the modern world, I find the whole system to be based on two things. First is scientific temper. That means science-based rational thinking, logic. And second is democracy. People swear by it. And Biden's recent attempt to revive democracy amused me. This initiative should have come from Modi. It is telling that both are often believed to be Western inventions, Western thoughts. The reality is, they do represent today the Western ascendancy of the world because of the Western colonization. But in the recent years, there has been a move to recognize advances in science made by the non-Western countries, the non-Western societies. If I look at them, I know there are many people who will call me jingoistic, but that's not the reality. The reality is we talk of, for example, in mathematics, of Pythagoras' theorem. This Pythagoras theorem was well known in ancient India. And it would be, we talk of Fibonacci's numbers, which should be replaced by Pingala's numbers or Hemchandra numbers, if you study the Vedic mathematics. you would find that the Pythagoras theorem, the Fibonacci numbers are known as Pingala numbers, and maybe Fibonacci adapted Pingala's numbers, or Hemchandra's numbers, as they are more popularly called. But the old beliefs and the assumptions that go with them are still strong. As Joe Biden noted last year, you don't tell how a black man contributed to the making of electric bulb. Isn't that ridiculous? In a similar way, it's time now to fix the historical record of the origin of democracy. The evidence of Republicans and the Republican system in ancient India has always been aware in the plain sight, but we have ignored it. Those who have read Mahabharata's Shanti Parv, republics are called Jans, and they are mentioned along with the essential features of administering them. If you look at the Vedas, they describe two forms of republican governance. The first would be consist of elected kings. They call them kings, but they were elected people. And this has always been seen as early form of democracy, later practiced in Europe, especially in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in the 16th and 18th century, those 200 years. So the British are much behind that. First it was India, then came Polish and Lithuanian Commonwealth, and then came the British. So that's a one form. The constitutional king, where the king is elected. The second form, in the Vedas is again in the Vedas, rule without a king, no monarch. And the powers are vested in a council, and the council was called Sabha. Later on, these Sabhas were converted into advisory councils, but at one time Sabha was the deciding factor, and the king who was elected had to go by that. The membership of such Sabhas was not determined by birth. They were not dynastic, but they were comprised by the people who had distinguished themselves by their actions. There is even a hint of the modern bicameral system, which I have talked many times. Sabha were often sharing power with Samiti. Now, Sabha was the people, but distinguished people, capable people, doctors, scientists, philosophers, and so on. And Samiti was made up of common people. And the Vidhata was the destiny maker, or the assembly of the people for debating policy, military matters, and important issues pertaining to all. It has been mentioned more than 100 times in Rig Veda that Vidhata of the people is Sabha and Samiti. So the parliamentary system with the elected king, so it's a republican, and both men and women. Now again, men and women would take part in these deliberations. Till recently, USA did not and Europe did not give the right to vote to the women. Greeks did not admit women or slaves as full citizens of their democracies. But India, in Vedic times, in Rig Veda, mentions that women should be a part of Sabha and Samiti if they deserve to be. But is Veda the only evidence? You might say that they are interpolated. The other sources are there. Panini wrote Ashtavadi, Ashtavai of Panini, and the Arthashastra Kautilya. Then the Buddhist and the Jain writings. They list 16 powerful states, or Mahajanpads. Mahajanpad is a republic of that time. After Alexander's invasion of 327 BC, Greek historians also record that the Indian states did not have kings. Now you can say that the Indians had manipulated Rig Veda and Panini and Kautilya, and the ancient Buddhist and Jain writings have been misinterpreted. But here are the Greek historians, they mention that. And they mention especially one state, a Vaishali, called Lynchy. Now you might not have heard of Lynchy. This is deserves special attention. Buddhist writing describe in detail Vaishali's rivalry with a neighboring Magad, which was a monarchy. Now Magad was a monarchy, Vaishali was a republic. The long battle between these two, in which Magad won, was a fight between two systems of governance. Vaishali as a republic was called Gantantra, republic. Magad was called Rajtantra, monarchy. Had the Lichavis won, the trajectory of governance may well have been made in the subcontinent as non-monarchical, because Magad won, so republicanism was buried and a breed of kings started coming up. Now, was Rajtantra off with his head like Mughals? Kill him, hang him, shoot him, burn him. With concentration of power in one hand? No. Even in Rajtantra, the state was thought to be composed of 7 elements. The first 3, according to Kautilya, Arthashastra, are the Swami or the king. King was called a Swami. And then Amtya are the ministers, administration. Then Janpad are the people. So the king must function on the advice of the ministers for the good of the people. And the ministers are appointed from among the people. And amazingly, if you have read Arthashastra, you will find that Arthashastra mentions to become the ministers, you have to pass an entrance test. It was like bureaucracy. And as per Arthashastra, in the happiness and benefit of his people is going to benefit the king. Now, isn't that the basic essential feature of democracy? It would be very unreasonable to expect republics in ancient India, as with the Greek city of Athens, to have full developed democratic institutions as we decide today. As late as the 1780s, when America was founded, the voting right was restricted only to the white males who owned property, paid taxes, and that was mere 6% of the population. Just 6% of the population could vote. And that idiosyncrasy is still present today. Democracy remains and will always be a work in progress. Another criticism of the idea of India being mother of democracy is that there is no surviving direct link between the ancient democracy and the modern Republic of India. Yes. The same, but then, does the same apply to the Greek city-states? If there was a continuity, it would be historically wrong because change is law of nature. But the fact is that the stability of the Indian democratic institutions among the post-colonial country since 1945, without having a break, without recourse to dictatorship or negation of democracy, and a very constitutional, legal, acceptable mode of transition from one party to the other shows that the democratic bias is inbuilt in India. The ancient thought contains the expressions of democracy, and that thought still lives in the mind of the people. Now, the question arises is what I said, that they need recognition in the world history. Why? The 21st century has to recognize the origin of democracy in ancient India, that ancient India was the breeding ground, was the model, was the prime example, not Greece, not Athens. And there are 2 reasons for that. First, India is a growing power on the world stage. Already it is recognized as the fourth world power. And India has to offer its own narrative on the world history. It's no longer bound by what? The Western historians said no. India has to present its own narrative. And also, secondly, as a growing superpower, it has to offer the world with a vision. The concept of namaste, for example, in the COVID period, has become universal. Now, people have to realize that India is not a nation of aspiring upstarts. No. We are a nation that inspired great journeys, whether it was Alexander the Great, whether it's Fayan, whether it's Hunsang, or whether it was Columbus. India was the magnet at Marco Polo. India was a magnet that attracted adventurers, conquerors, philosophers, historians. And they came because they knew that India was the experimental laboratory of the world's philosophy and the world thought. And what India was thinking 5,000 years before Christ, the West thought 1800 years after Christ. That means a difference of 7,000 years. India has a lead of 7,000 years over the Western thought. And yet, the West says that our thoughts are supreme. Rubbish. That's one reason. The historical acceptance has to be there that India is not only great, it was great as well. And the modern greatness emanates from that origin. That's most important. The second reason relates to the general loss of confidence in US. US prides itself on being a model democracy. Reality is it is not. It has always been a promoter of dictatorship. Whether it was Marcos in Philippines, whether it was Zia in Pakistan, Khomeini also toppled Shah of Iran without American support. And wherever the Americans have gone and supported, they have not supported real democracy, they have supported upstarts and dictators. And as a result, it has lost confidence. The world has lost confidence. Now the power struggles for the near future are becoming nearer and very clear. And apart from the power struggle, there's another struggle. That's to define history and to take the history forward. At this time, a new resurgent India is coming up. An India that sees its own democracy as a pale imitation of an Anglo-American system. And that's not good for India. And that's not good for the world. We have got to realize that the Indian system is not a pale imitation, but is a direct heritage in the lineage of democracy and republicanism that marked India 7,000 years back. That was celebrated in Vedas, in Panini, in Arthashastra, in Mahabharata, Shanti Parva was mentioned. That system was not negated by anything else except by the vicarious victory of one kingdom, Magad, over Lichavi. And then the invasions by the foreigners. When the invasion takes place, you always look to a strong leader. And they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And once that strong leader thought that he is indispensable, he became a king. And once the king started, they want the power to continue generation-wise, the dynasties are born. And then they purchase the religious leaders to declare the divine right of kings. So this sort of a thing has to be negated, that the ideal system of Sabha Samiti, Janpad, they were essential republics which hold a candle to the new world, showing a new light. And that new light would create a system politically stable, vision, and dedicated to the service of the people. So the more they, Indians, ancient republicans, and the ancient republic as a concept is recognized in the world history as the originator of the concept of democracy and republicanism, that would give a new thought to the people that if a system is sustained, even when it was colonized, even when it was a slave, and yet the thought process remained the same and the democracy flourished, that would help in establishing a better system of governance than we have today around the globe. Thank you.